Well, good Thursday morning, everyone. Hey, before we jump back into our study of the apostles, and I hope you're enjoying that, uh, I want to invite you on Saturday morning at 9 a.m., Clubhouse 5, Room 1, right up there in the front. I want to invite you to what we call Activate One. If you'd like to learn any more about Saddleback and what we believe and how we do things, and maybe more importantly, why we do things, this is the class for you. It's like our new members class, and you will be given that opportunity to join, but absolutely no pressure because we want you to follow the Lord's leading in your life. But you can't do that if you don't know what Saddleback's all about. So if you have not been to what we now call Activate One, I want to invite you out. We serve you breakfast, coffee, great time of fellowship, and it's really interesting, fast moving, probably lasts around 2 hours, I'm thinking, maybe a little less. I hope you can come on out. Have a great day. Let's jump back into our study for this week about our 12 apostles. In our study of the apostles, we come to another man named James. You say, well, wait a minute. We talked about James last week. Here's the thing. There were two James. Out of the 12, James was used twice. Two guys had the same name. So they're referred to as James, the son of Alphaeus, and James, son of Zebedee. We actually talked about James, the son of Alphaeus, last week. And this week, it's the son of Zebedee. James was a common name for sure. There are actually two other Jameses mentioned in the Bible. One is the half brother of Jesus. And that James, I know this is confusing, but James, the half brother of Jesus, wrote the book of James that's in our Bible. James, son of Zebedee, was one of the 12 apostles. There was another James, and he was one of the early leaders in the church in Jerusalem. But we're not talking about him either. So when Jesus called James to follow him, hey, in fact, I was going to tell you about it, but let me just read it to you. By the way, this James has another very famous brother, and I think you'll see it right now. Jesus is talking, and it's in Matthew chapter 4 at verse, let's start at verse 19. It says, Jesus called out to them, that is Peter and Andrew, come, follow me, and I'll show you how to fish for people. And they left their nets at once and followed him. Verse 21, a little further up the shore, he saw two other brothers, James and John, sitting in a boat with their father Zebedee, repairing their nets. And he called to them. They immediately followed Jesus, leaving the boat and their father behind. So did you catch it? James, son of Zebedee, had a brother named John, and John the apostle. Both of them followed Jesus and became two of his 12. Not only were James and John two of the 12, but they were both on what is referred to as Jesus's inner circle, along with Peter. By the way, tomorrow we're going to talk about his brother John, and he is, they're all of these guys, totally amazing, quick to their faith, and long to their faith. Jesus died, rose from the dead, and then ascended into heaven. And he left them. He left them here to spread the word about himself. And they did. None of them, including this apostle James ever left or denied him or stopped following him. Now, like I say, he was on the inner circle. And so he got to see certain things that a lot of the other apostles did not see, including in Mark chapter 5, when Jesus raised a young girl from the dead. He brought her back to life. And you can read about that in Mark chapter 5. James, son of Zebedee, was there. He was there also when Jesus went on the mountaintop, the Mount of Transfiguration, when he met both Moses and Elijah. And by the way, did you ever think about that? Moses and Elijah aren't dead. Neither are the other people who have died along the way if they're followers of Jesus and of God. They're just in heaven. And so that Jesus called them down, and James got to see them alive. On another occasion, and this is one that I know, the story that you know, but in Mark chapter 10 at verse 39, actually it begins at verse 37, and James and John, his brother, asked Jesus to let them sit on either side of him in heaven. Can you imagine asking Jesus for a privilege like that? But they did, and that's, he had called them the sons of thunder. They didn't hesitate to do that. But what a great thing, that Jesus handled that so well. He does use the occasion, Jesus does, to kind of prophesy about their future. And James and John would both suffer persecution, just as he would. And he turned it actually into a lesson in humility for all the disciples. And if you want to read that in Mark 10, 42 to 45. And it did not make James that very popular with the disciples, because they wanted the same privilege. He and John just had the audacity to ask for it. So they continued to follow Jesus the rest of their life. In John 21, when Jesus was resurrected, he's right there. James is. When Jesus tells them to cast their net on the other side, and then in his risen state, they share breakfast on the beach. And James was there. But what about that experience or that prophecy that Jesus did about what would happen to James? This is one of the first things that's recorded of a time where the apostle was killed. And in Acts chapter 12, here's what Luke wrote about that event. And he says, about that time, King Herod Agrippa began to persecute some believers in the church. He had the apostle James, that is John's brother, killed with a sword. So we know exactly how James died. He was killed with a sword. And when Herod saw how much this pleased the Jewish people, he also arrested Peter. And that becomes, actually with Peter, it becomes a great answer to prayer. And that's a great story to read in Acts chapter 12. But James, he died for his faith. He was the first apostle to be killed, to be martyred. Stephen had been martyred, but Stephen was not an apostle. James was, and he died for his faith. We know he went immediately to heaven to be with Jesus, who I know said, well done, my good and faithful servant. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow. Today